What you are seeing is a World War II era landing ship tank, an LST. This is probably the largest landing craft used during the Second World War. Several decks, and it could carry upwards of a company of soldiers. It had a crew of upwards of 100. I am showing you this video so you'll get an idea of what happened in the war in Ukraine this week. Ukraine continues its naval drone campaign. This week, it struck a Russian tanker and a Russian amphibious landing craft at a naval base to the east of Crimea. The amphibious landing ship, the Eleno-Gorsky Gonyak, was seen being towed away. And this actually is a tactical victory in the war. This ship, as you can see from the video of the LST, has an amazing what we call roll-on, roll-off capability. So this ship provided the Russians with a impressive resupply and reinforcement capability. But strategically speaking, this is no Moskva. Now, Moskva was the high-profile Russian cruiser they sunk early in the war. Elsewhere in the war news, former Governor Chris Christie made a surprise visit to Ukraine as he makes a push for the GOP nomination against Donald Trump. And that's pretty much it on the Ukrainian side. The Russians, on the other hand, are resettling citizens in Mariupol. The BBC reported Russian citizens are being encouraged to resettle in the area. And CNN reported that while Ukrainians have announced some advances near Bakhmut, as I predicted, the Russians are doing what they were trying to do. There is a village near Luhansk. This is 100 miles directly north of Bakhmut. So the Ukrainians are pushing in this area, and instead of directly responding, the Russians are pushing in the other area. Now, Russia is playing the long game. They're betting the politics of Ukrainian allies will get in the way. They're betting their tactics will win. Russia has fought 4 Western invasions, and Moscow believes they can outlast the Ukrainians and their allies. Even when Russia lost the Crimean War, it was only about a decade until the treaty signed to end the Crimean War was a worthless piece of paper because of a shakeup in Western European politics. Basically, the treaty said Russia could not send naval ships into the Black Sea, and within virtually a decade, there were Russian ships in the Black Sea. That was over 100 years ago. 2 centuries later, they believe they can outweigh their neighbors. See, the question people have to ask is, what is this war? Moscow is betting that this is the Great Patriotic War, also known as the Second World War, where they will slow, stop, and then repel an attacker from the west after a long, bloody slog with a little help from their friends. Ironically, they're counting on rail cars full of arms from Iran, which was a major supply route during the Second World War. Now, Washington, Brussels and Kiev seem to be betting this is the Russo-Japanese war, which will be over relatively quickly due to Russian ineptitude, obsolete technology, and poor morale among the rank and file. Now, one key factor that I want to mention is Iran. And obviously, I believe Iran's entry into this conflict marked the beginning of a world war. Iran has been where Russia is. Iran's been there for over 4 years with heavy Western sanctions on their nation. In fact, the sanctions placed on revolutionary Iran was the reason Saddam Hussein invaded Iran in the Iran-Iraq War. He believed that their military, while impressive, couldn't get spare parts. Iran, since then, has built its defense industry pretty much from the ground up in many ways, jury-rigging and cannibalizing equipment while they desperately reverse-engineered whatever they could. It's the reverse-engineered weapons were never considered top shelf, but to Assad of Syria and now Putin in Russia, they don't need top shelf. Now, one thing most people are not aware of is that the Shah of Iran bought everything the Americans would sell him, including F-14 Tomcats, which are still flying. Most of the Iranian Air Force is American-made. And the fact it's still flying will tell you about the ingenuity and industry of the Iranian nation. The Americans, back in the 60s and 70s before the revolution, built factories for the assembly of the Bell 214 helicopter, also known as the UH-1 Huey. And there were plants that built the TOW and Maverick missiles. In fact, the Iranians actually exported the TOW missile. And because of all of what I just said, it should be no surprise that Iran is the arsenal of extremist jihad across the Mideast, and now it's Vladimir Putin's arsenal. Iran has reverse engineered an amazing array of military equipment. They basically take it apart, and then they say, how can we build it or something that will at least do something this thing was supposed to? With a helicopter, they would just say, how can we build a helicopter? And all it takes is for them to do that once, and they start building helicopters. And their helicopters get better. They reverse engineered the J-85 jet engine, which was used in the F-5 fighter jet and its trainer version, the T-38. And this is not surprising. We sold them the J-85 jet engine. We taught them how to maintain it, and we may have even built factories to produce it in Iran. They reverse engineered the Dragon wire-guided anti-tank guided missile into what they call the SAG 1 and 2 missiles. And I apologize to the Iranian and Farsi community because I am probably not saying some of these names correctly. The TOW missile was not only reverse engineered into the Tufan missile, but it was further developed into a glide bomb and an air-to-surface missile. We've discussed the Ukrainians receiving Hawk missiles. And if Iran was not allied with Russia, they would probably be happy to sell some of these to Ukraine. Although what they would sell to Ukraine would be the Shaheen surface-to-air missile, which is their reverse-engineered Hawk missile that goes in their Mersad air defense systems. But As an American, I don't feel too bad. They've reverse engineered everything else. Plenty of European, Chinese, and even Soviet hardware, including the Soviets' AT-3 Sagar wire-guided anti-tank missile. Now, I mention all this to hammer home the point that the latest weapons and gizmos will not defeat Vladimir Putin. Iran is the arsenal of Russia, and that knowledge can change how the West will fight and win in Ukraine. Iran is vulnerable and it has enemies, but I'm not the only one thinking that way. There is a
the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed as the twilight left gleaming, whose stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket-red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, take on that star-spangled banner yet wave, for the land of the free, and the home of the brave. On the shore dimly seen through the mist of the deep, where the foes of your host in dread silence reposes, what is that which the breeze o'er the towering steep, as it fitfully blows, half concealed, half discloses? Now